Interactions between quantum world and our consciousness, Part 1. Hello, in order to illustrate a little more precisely the functions of quantum mechanics, contrary to what is often only superficially mentioned in documentaries on this subject, I would like to discuss the mechanisms and their applications which activate the quantum consciousness, quantum field, of every human being, in particular, which effects are thereby produced by the consciousness on reality. Since time plays no role in quantum physics and our consciousness generates the access into the quantum world, which is the interface between quantum field and material world, everybody can influence time and development in an extraordinary way by conscious decisions made with free will, which have to be irrevocable, producing amazing effects, since this influence always remains completely independent of the space-time flowing only in one direction. Proceed as follows. Direct the focus of your consciousness to an event that could occur in the future with only a small probability, an event that at the same time also triggers or supports an essential, inevitable chain of events. Take an action towards this potentially possible event, an irrevocable decision which may not be withdrawn by you, that you will carry out this action decision taken by you in any case, no matter what will happen. This action should furthermore be directly related to the event, that is, there should be a causal effective dependency, connection between the event and the action taken by you, your irrevocable decision. Concerning the attitude of your consciousness, you should know that above all, it's important that you will stick with your decision, because this decision cannot manifest itself in the quantum world if you waver, that is, if these decisions remain in superposition, if all possible probabilities of your future reaction to an event remain open. The option of changing your decision would immediately dissolve the effect on space and time, the developments taking place therein, or the effect would be dissolved from the beginning. You must therefore from the beginning stick to your decision and be silent about it. However, and this is the somewhat incalculable risk at the whole, one never knows how and where exactly the effect will manifest. It can be small, but it can also be violenter, depending on what role your irrevocable decision plays in the context of existing social or even societal constructs. Even more important here is to not underestimate these instructions given here in any case. It must be said that exactly the opposite of what one believes to want to produce may occur as well. Moreover, for the manifestation, occurrence of the effect, it is important that your irrevocable decision represents an action which you wouldn't perform usually, something that you would not have accomplished according to the normal functioning of your conventional everyday consciousness and character. You must react with free will, without fear, and not according to estimating, despondent, or value-oriented standards. Examples. Let's start with a simple example from people's personal lives, an example probably familiar to everyone. Let's assume that before a conflict with a person takes place, you decide that you never want to get in touch with that person again if a certain constant conflict with that person arises again. In this case, you would completely and absolutely break off contact and show no more references to ever wanting to get in touch with this person again. The micro-events of the quantum world, so I want to call them here, would produce that course of events, instructing the quantum world with firm decision, so to speak. Whether you would get in contact with each other again, and above all, in which way, will be solely dependent on the quantum world and the micro-events existing in it, which control and weigh the course and the benefit for the material world. Changes within the personal life arising from such decisions play an important role, and will express themselves in multi-layered and far-reaching forms, whose details one cannot survey completely. Now contrast this example with the fact that such personal decisions are often made on the basis of personal life choices, a closure or termination of an unpleasant condition, consequences that every person draws at some point in their life. But it is not about such a decision which is bound to the ego. The taken, irrevocable decision must not be a frivolous one, which is only to eliminate an unpleasant condition or to produce advantages. The essence of the decision must be against the very convenient function of your other psychic functioning. It must be a hard decision, requiring courage and overcoming, a decision which overcomes previous behavioral patterns of yours. Effects won't manifest otherwise. Referring to the previous example, if, despite all efforts, large-scale demarcation and the best possible care, an extremely improbable encounter with the person nevertheless forms again, this wouldn't be coincidental. The nature of the encounter and the associated interactions play a role as well. This example seems perhaps a little bit flat, also because one wonders at this point immediately what would happen if one would never see each other again, since this case surely is numerous. Blaming such effects on the quantum world is expedient and proves nothing at all. But one should not want to explain all of this quite too simply. One must try it out himself, not necessarily after the example constructed here, which I have chosen therefore from the interpersonal area, since this method shows quantum effects most clearly for a human being. Second example for the development of a decision. Imagine you would be involved in an action or possibility. You would receive an invitation, which you would reject in any case, because you would have nothing to spare for it, and you have anyway also completely different plans and no time. Now, however, a few days before this invitation appeared, you firmly vowed, this would be your irrevocable decision, to participate at a coming major event in your personal environment, an event that you would otherwise definitely turn down, no matter which circumstances may appear. Third example. This is not so much an example as a task. Imagine that you wanted to achieve something, a specific goal set by you. In order to achieve this goal, you would have to make far more than a single decision involving a causal-effective dependency connection to the event. For example, there could be many irrevocable decisions necessary, similar to programming software. If event A occurs, then decision 1. If event A does not occur, then decision 2. If event B occurs, then decision 3, but in combination with decision 4, etc. The efficiency in making decisions could be increased as well, but do not overdo it. For beginners, this example is not to be recommended. Also for practiced ones, the implementation is difficult, because by the handling of many decisions, no matter how clearly and distinctly they have been separated and formulated from each other in the consciousness, always also the tendency to the superposition in the quantum field is given, and therefore any effect is cancelled. A tip at this point: think also about other essential building blocks that could equal the factor of an irrevocable decision in this process. Interactions between quantum world and our consciousness, Part 2. Often, the effects of a firmly made decision appear to be rendered harmless by the quantum world in which a course of personal development occurs, which stops the effects of the decision. Since the quantum field, God, is not a thing, but consciousness, which corrects, dissolves, or completely accepts the manifestation in the material world, depending on how useful the taken decision is for the overall development of it, effects are always extremely twisted. Often one notices them clearly only after one reflects their effects after a long time again. The effects of the irrevocable decision work more abstractly as well. For example, if you were a public figure or knew that you would be part of an important development in the future, all your actions would be guided and protected. Even your actions already taken would suddenly fit into the scheme of time and space. When you are finally able to carry out your decision, it could show your involvement in an important coming event, if your personal decision can withstand the necessary influence on the world. At this point, I leave it to your intelligence and intuition to consider in which way the effects of a conscious decision can influence the course and nature of events. But remember, there will always be many decisions made by others. Think abstractly to redirect the possibilities of these effects in your favor. Think about how you accomplish to see with your ears. Think of the blind people who, by clicking their tongues, can make their surroundings visible to them like a bat. Complexity and intricacy of decision interactions. Sometimes one will recognize the corresponding mechanisms of the made and executed decision are temporally backward directed, i.e., that the present decision causes or caused changes in the past. This means that the present decision produced an influence on the past, which helped to initiate the present decision. Through a present decision, one could suddenly also understand why one made an effort in the past to do something to which one originally did not give any consent at all, did not feel like doing, was perhaps pushed, but did it anyway, and thus created the personal future course in the first place. Perhaps at that time everything depended on just one act, one idea, perhaps one thought, the execution of which you did not understand, but the intention of which you nevertheless followed, and which for some reason remained in your memory. This influence came from your future, from you, from the decision to act firmly in the future. The reason why the consciousness is from future, present, and past are causally connected with each other is the time-dimensional overlapping property of consciousness and the resulting always mutual influence of different times on each other, the almost constant structure of your brain at different times, ergo the ghostly quantum effect in our brain, mutual influence to form and create reality. The brain is the only matter that generates consciousness with its structure. It is generated and fed directly from the quantum field, God, the universal consciousness. The brain is therefore permanently connected with God on the quantum level in superposition. Now these representations seem to many at this point possibly simply crazy, interpretative, incomprehensible, perhaps also simply unbelievable, because there are many psychological models which would like to attribute this effect to individual psychological patterns, models which conjecture to be able to explain the effects of the quantum field by psychology. However, numerous experiments with the quantum effect have proved exactly these connections with the consciousness, that e.g., for influencing the past only a present, quantum effect of your consciousness is necessary. The investigation results to this are no coincidences, but unambiguous. Structures are mutually connected with each other, are controlled. One can conclude irrefutably from this that everybody must be thus able to send information from the own future into the past to himself, if one knows how and in which way one has to interpret the received info correctly, because this always remains vague, depending on how practiced one is, and not disturbed by biological and personal individual parts of the own consciousness. Also, the effects which arise from the connection between past and future consciousness can have a diffuse effect, sometimes even produce a chain reaction for further events, which, however, does not manifest itself in a change of the course of time, but on the contrary expresses itself as the already always taken and existing way of life, and then amplifies directions. Quantum mechanics is always confused and acts against all models of known causality, and explanations mostly seem absolutely illogical. About these effects, one can only say for sure so far that the only constant in this completely insufficient relation between quantum world and causal temporal occurring course of time is the consciousness acting according to free will, in connection with the decision for something. Also, the observation of the own consciousness and perception of feelings and impressions plays a further important role here. Basically said to the quantum mechanics, we, our consciousness together with the material world, are the result product of the quantum world, not vice versa. The ordinary science still has to internalize this in every field of research and learn to apply this to the material world. This is difficult because it means to completely rethink and redefine everything. The quantum field, God, is not a dimension. In this field, all infinitely existing dimensions, and much more, which cannot even be grasped or described with conventional thinking, merge into an infinitely entangled state, a single field, a hyperdimensional field, which in turn forms an infinite consciousness from which the mind of every human being or living being is generated and the properties of matter are defined. This is not magic. God is not a magician. God is the quantum field, the highest universal perception in which we all swim with our states of consciousness. The field is neither masculine, feminine, nor neuter, and the universe is nothing more than a uterus in which our consciousness arises. Ergo, the universe is ultimately not the goal, but only a temporary state in which we grow up. The one above it is the actual point of direction for which we try to prepare our consciousness, our soul. Only when we no longer think in a judgmental way, when things no longer affect us within our animal thinking and valuations coupled to it, we can grasp a state in a new and different way. However, the rules of our world, which are connected with our animalistic thinking, complicate this new perception considerably, especially because these ways of thinking are very important for the existence within this world, secure our well-being. However, if one wants to approach pure consciousness, one's own soul, and develop it, one must be able to detach oneself from the physical foundations of consciousness and those built upon them, the instincts, imprints, and emotions. Then a new horizon of consciousness opens, It is only a pity that religions and esoteric teachings often miss this due to their in truth only world-beautifying and peacemaking approach, and even distort it to the point of absurdity, and that at the same time the recognized science with its dull primitive methods of analysis and research is not able to identify the meaning of consciousness and the approaches hanging on it at all, not to mention to want to apply this at all. A dilemma for the further development of mankind, from which it must free itself first.